Good morning. My name is Brian Sterling. I'm the Director of South Carolina Department of Corrections. I have Chief Mark Keel with the South Carolina Department of Law Enforcement here with SLED. I want to thank a couple people. This has been a long couple days for the department. I want to specifically thank Chief Keel and his folks at SLED, Richland County Sheriff's Department, South Carolina Division of Police Services, Dorchester and Berkeley County Sheriff's Department, the Ridgeville Police, and I want to thank the Texas Rangers for their assistance in the capture this morning of the escapee. What we know so far from our investigation, which is ongoing, he left the facility on July 4th at 8 p.m. We received information the next day that he was gone. We started our count and verified around 2 o'clock on the 5th that he was gone. He used a makeshift dummy to fake the staff out, that he was still in his bed. And we issued beyond alerts to the media. We sent tweets out. We sent Facebook messages out. And we immediately called SLED to come in and start assisting us with the investigation. And I just want to say that everybody worked tirelessly to find this individual over the last 48 to 72 hours. People didn't sleep. People kept on working, chasing lead after lead. And I know when we have an emergency, I can call SLED and I can call Chief Keel, and he's going to be there and his guys are going to be there, and they were. So I cannot thank them enough. I cannot thank local law enforcement that put themselves in harm's way, SLED agents that put themselves in harm's way, took time away from their families, our police services folks that did the same. Not a lot of people were sleeping. What I can tell you is if someone does leave the South Carolina Department of Corrections and tries to escape, we will hunt them down and look for them until we find them. They will not be able to sleep or close their eyes and feel comfortable that they've gotten away, because we will not stop like you saw this week. This is a massive manhunt and a great effort by law enforcement. I think the chief has a couple things. One thing I do want to say is, and I've been hammering on this since I've been here, John Osmond's been hammering on this, we believe a cell phone was used to facilitate and give this inmate the resources to escape. We also potentially believe that a drone was used to help him get the contraband in to escape. We still have to investigate that fact. We 100% know a cell phone was used, or multiple cell phones were used while he was incarcerated. And we believe a drone was used to fly in the tools that allowed him to escape. I know there's been some questions about how he escaped. So he used wire cutters to cut through fences at 8 o'clock on July 4th and took off from there. I'll let Chief Keel talk about the investigation from there. I'm happy to answer any institutional questions. But Chief Keel has some things he'd like to say, and we can answer any questions y'all have. Thank you very much.
Good morning. First off, I want to also thank law enforcement, local law enforcement, many agencies that were involved in this, along with our state partners in other states. I want to especially thank my folks, our folks at Fusion Center that work night and day, folks from our fugitive unit, our investigators around the state and in the region that worked tirelessly. This was just good old-fashioned law enforcement is what this was. We took every lead that we had. We worked every lead to the end. Those leads led to additional leads. And again, we worked night and day. I will tell you that about 1 o'clock this morning, we had worked on a lead and developed that lead. We got some information at that time that led us to Austin, Texas. We contacted the Texas Rangers at about 2:30 this morning. They identified a hotel, a Motel 6 hotel in Austin, Texas, and they hit that hotel room at about 4 o'clock this morning. They caught him while he was sleeping. There was no resistance. I will tell you that he was armed with both a semi-automatic pistol and a pump shotgun. He was also had additional ammunition. He had 4 cell phones, and he had $47,654 in cash on him at the time of his arrest. We will work with Texas officials to and Department of Corrections to bring him back to South Carolina, obviously, as soon as we possibly can. The investigation is still ongoing. I can tell you that there are a number of people that assisted him during the course of this, his escape, and we intend on continuing to investigate, and everyone who assisted him, we intend on bringing to justice as well. So there's not a whole lot more that we're going to say about it at this time, but the bottom line, it was great police work on behalf of a lot of law enforcement officers, both local and state officers that led to his arrest. And last thing I want to echo, and the director's already said it, but it is senseless to me that the federal government continues to prohibit state agencies and state correctional officials from blocking cell phones. And I know that the director has worked on it. Directors before him here at Corrections has worked on, communicating with federal officials about blocking it. They are allowed to do it in federal correctional institutions, but we're not allowed to do it here. And unfortunately, as long as cell phones continue to be utilized by inmates in prisons, we're going to have things like this. We're going to have very well-planned escapes, as this was, are going to be able to continue. And so we just encourage our federal officials to help us and help our citizens and keep our state safe by banning these cell phones and by allowing us to block them in our state prisons.
One thing is a follow-up on those cell phones. I stood before many of y'all a couple weeks ago down at Trenton Correctional, down outside of Aiken in Edgefield County, and said that the reason that we had those assaults and those hostages was because of a cell phone. An officer went to take a cell phone away. At Kershaw Correctional on Easter Day, same thing. This is just going to keep on happening and happening and happening. I was in Washington, D.C. last week with several other directors from other states, California, Arkansas, Alabama. There were people there from Maryland. We sat down with the DOJ and we explained the problem to them, showed them what was going on. We saw a couple weeks ago headlines in the papers about a meth ring that was busted where people are incarcerated and still running a drug ring from prison. And I've said many times that the next thing they're going to do, and we saw it here a couple years ago, was drones. Well, we're seeing it, and this could have been a catastrophic result because of cell phones and drones. And it's a simple fix. Allow us to block the signal. Allow us to not allow these people to continue unfettered access to the outside world. No longer are people stopped from continuing their criminal ways from behind bars. They are physically incarcerated, but they are no longer virtually incarcerated. They could be on Facebook, Twitter, every kind of social media. They can continue their criminal ways, and we saw it here today, and I've predicted this was going to happen. I predicted it in D.C. last week. We had productive meetings, but it's time to stop talking and it's time for action. And we need the FCC and we need the federal government to allow us to block these calls. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So there are a lot of people who live right around the prison. Is there a reason there wasn't more information shared with the public from the time that you found out that this inmate escaped from the time he was found this morning?
Sure. We put bolos out. Y'all tweeted it out that it happened soon thereafter. We put out social media posts and things of that nature. We contacted the local law enforcement. We do all that stuff, and we try to reach as many people as we can. But, you know, y'all are retweeting it and sending out via social media. I know statewide media sent it out. I think it went out nationwide. So we try to reach everybody as soon as we can.
Could you clarify? I think you mentioned the lead that you had that led you to Austin. Could you clarify what
That's
that was?
a question for Chief Keel.
We're not going to talk any more specifically about those leads this time.
This is Causey's second escape. How is his security going to change once he returns to SCDC?
So he was in high custody for a number of years. But as everybody knows, you know, if we keep people in solitary for too long, then the lawsuits start and the courts start ordering us to allow people to leave. So we have to have a process and a way out. But he will be in maximum security, the highest security we have, for a very long time.
Will he go to Kirkland?
I'm not going to comment about where he's going because he has to still be transported back to the state and go through extradition, but he will be at a high security facility.
Was Causey in general population when he escaped?
He was.
So what was his monitoring like? When was the last time, or how often would he be monitored site by an officer?
There was an officer in that dorm, in that side of that dorm, on that wing, that whole time.
Were there other inmates who aided in his escape?
That's all part of the investigation, and we'll get that information to you when we can, but right now, we're just happy we found him.
You mentioned some things he had with him when he was found. Did you mention a fake ID or a fake license plate?
He did have some type of ID. I think it may have been a South Carolina ID card. I'm not exactly sure, but he did have that with him.
Do you know if low staffing could have contributed to his escape?
So that dorm, like I said, had 2 staff members, one in each side of the wing. Some of our institutions do not have that. We can always use more staffing, but sometimes the staff just has to follow policy and procedure. And if that's not done, that's when we have failures like this.
So was there a lapse in policy and procedure?
That's part of the investigation. And so what we've been doing the last 24 or 72 hours is trying to find him. We focused our resources on that. Now we're going to go back and investigate exactly why this happened and how this happened to make sure it doesn't happen again.
How many fences would Causey have had to cut through to get outside?
We believe 4. Or 4, not we believe 4.
Well, then what is the theory, once he immediately was outside the fence? Was he on foot until he was able to get a hold of the car?
Again, those are parts of the investigation that we're not ready to answer at this time.
So is it unclear at this point what kind of means of transportation he used to get all the way to Texas?
It is at this point. We're like I say, we're not. Wouldn't be appropriate for us to comment on that at this time.
The first time that Causey escaped, he used a similar method to school guards, making a dummy out of
Officers.
paper mache, officers, a dummy out of toilet paper, paper mache. Can you say what materials he used this time?
I don't know yet, but I know he made it look like he was in the bed. So he used that as a ruse for the officers.
He's alone in his cell?
He had a roommate.
Do you know why there was this gap between the escape at 8 p.m. on the 4th and I think you said the head count was at 2 p.m. On the 5th? Why he wasn't noticed missing in between that time?
That's going to be part of our internal review and investigation, and we'll let you know. But again, when policies and procedures aren't followed, events like this can happen. And we've seen it several times where things have happened where people haven't followed policies and procedures. And this is another example that we keep on training on this and working with our staff to make sure that they are appropriately trained and follow policies and procedures, and that's why they're there.
When should there be a morning head count in that room?
I'm not going to get into the head counts on when and everything, but there should have been one. And that's part of the investigation, so I'm not saying if there was one or not, but we will find that information out when we complete the investigation.
How many other inmates are in that dorm?
I don't know.
Or
I know.
that part of the dorm, however you know.
I don't know. I think I can tell you there's probably about 1,200 to 1,300 in that institution. So I'll get you an answer to that. I don't have the specific number.
And can you say how long he had been in general population and leaving?
Well, he'd been in and out of trouble, so he'd been in solitary back and forth. But we can get you the specific date when he'd been in general population.
Sir, is this a new trend, drones flying over correctional facilities, and how big of an issue is this?
So we're seeing this as an emerging trend. John Osmond, who's the director, many of y'all who have been around for a while, started talking about this in 2005, 2004. Chief Keel was around in law enforcement then. I did an interview with the New York Times, I think 2.5 years ago, about drones being found at Lee Correctional, flying in. I likened it to Amazon or FedEx delivering to an institution. And through great police work of our police services folks, we were able to find and capture those folks that did that. But we're seeing this a lot. And again, the general public and the policymakers in Washington should take heed, because it may not happen in South Carolina. It could have happened here. But there are going to be some very serious consequences where people are going to get hurt because of drones and cell phones. I can't say it enough. Y'all have covered it. You know it. These people are incarcerated physically, but they're still continuing their criminal ways from behind bars. Our officers get assaulted. They intimidate witnesses. They continue their criminal ways. They're on social media. It's awful. It needs to be fixed. And I don't know what we can do as corrections officials and state law enforcement officials, but it needs to be fixed, and there's a simple fix.
You've been very vocal, and Director Osment before you, with the FCC pressing them to make a change. How is that conversation going under Chairman Causey's administration?
It's a lot better than it has been. I can commend Chairman Pye for coming down and having a field hearing here and hearing Captain Johnson's testimony. What I cannot commend, though, is the cell phone industry who came up and drew every red herring they could about why not to block cell phones. It's a moneymaker for them, and we know this, but they give you every red herring they have, and we know that we have the technology that we can zero in on institutions and make sure that these cell phones, these calls do not go out. And it's just purely a moneymaker, and so, again, someone's going to get hurt, seriously hurt, or killed. We got lucky in this situation, and I say lucky because he didn't hurt someone, but law enforcement did such a great job and, again, worked tirelessly to find this person so he could not hurt anybody. But he's a dangerous person. I mean, you heard what Chief Keel said, what he had on him. So we're doing everything we can. We do searches. We spend so much money. We're putting up 50-foot golf netting around most of our institutions, spending $7.65 million, tax dollars, that could be going to other things, that could be going to officer salaries to help staffing, that could be going to education to help people re-enter society. But no, we have to spend it to put up this netting around our institutions so we can stop these throwovers. Now they're going to fly over the nets, so what do we do next? Is it going to be more money, more tax dollars? Call your representatives. Call the FCC. It's an open comment period. Let them know that this needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed now. It needs to be fixed yesterday.
Can you confirm there was a drone used in this particular incident to smuggle contraband in?
That's part of the investigation, but we have heard, we believe so, but we need to confirm that, and that's what we'll do when we start interviewing people and do the internal review.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.